Hit the
Oh,
fucking button.
hit the button. All right, it's just me and you tonight, sir. Poor Richie's under the weather. He's got the HQS again, I think.
Yeah, it's a shame when that happens and he's got explosive diarrhea.
Yeah,
From but she pegged him too hard.
well,
That's all. And
well,
hey, not that there's anything wrong with that, but you got to be prepared for the consequences if you're going to do stuff like that.
exactly. Um, all right, so we were trying to figure out, so most of the time we do some pretty good show prep, at least as far as throwing the topic down and then maybe even getting a page or two of notes out there. Um, and we actually got away from that because I think we got so honestly. I know it sounds like we kind of just throw stuff together, but we do typically have ideas and they just kind of steamroll into other things. But one thing I was talking about before we started recording was just like, hey, we kind of haven't really hit music hard, and I would love to hit some concepts again with Rich whenever he's available. Things that you and I recorded on a long time ago, one hit wonders and cover bands, whatever. And that kind of, you kind of got into a conversation about throwing some CDs in a binder, which is cool. Like you don't really think about those, those days anymore, But you had mentioned an album that kind of, I don't know, kind of sparked your interest again, and like you said, hit differently. You want to kind of get on that?
Yeah. So, Matt Sharp, formerly of Weezer, started a band called The Rentals back in the 90s, mid 90s. And they haven't, the album that we're talking about is The Rentals, and it's titled The Return of the Rentals. It's the probably the most famous Rentals song that anyone that is out there is "Friends of P." And whether you know it, the song is by them, and you like the band because of it, or you've just heard the song. If you were listening to alternative radio in the 90s, I guarantee you heard it. Like it was around. Like I didn't even really know who the hell the Rentals were when it initially came out. But, as I grew musically and learned about the genre and learned about, how the band came to be, I I picked up the album. I gained an appreciation for it, but I never really, I always thought, oh, this is an okay album. It's got, one or two good songs on it. And then when I was throwing together my binder, I was like, you know what, let me throw the Rentals in there. And so the other day I put it in, and I like literally for probably 2 weeks straight have been listening to nothing but Return of the Rentals.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And so I finally I took it out today because I needed to. I had to do a little bit of extra driving, and so I took it out today. But it's dude, it's such a good album, and I don't know what it is that my mind, I guess, opened up more to it because I never thought it was a bad album ever.
Mhm.
I never thought that, but I never was as into it before as I am now. And I don't know if that's nostalgia or if that's I don't know. I don't know what the difference is, but
Yeah, it's weird. I get what you're saying. It, you that era of music for one, there was a lot of these bands that I like you just said. You know the song, you might not know the band, but if you're listening to anything in that genre at that time, you've certainly heard them before. You just might not know them by name. But there was a lot of groups that were like that. But I think it's I don't know. It comes with maybe it comes with age. The lyrics might actually. Was that something maybe you thought were the lyrics any different that maybe resonated more? Or
no, no. And that's the thing, like it was just the songs just overall. Like I guess I appreciated the structure more. I appreciated I surely the lyrics too, but it wasn't like anything that I could key in on. It was just, man, this is a really solid album. I really like this. I'm really digging this album. And questioning why it was that I didn't really get that same feeling before because the
hmm,
album didn't change.
right, right. Yeah, it's funny. You're saying that, and I got to thinking. I know this is kind of a similar vein, but not quite in that alternative, necessarily that era of alternative. Um, and how we knew them growing up, the band Incubus. certainly I would not consider our entry level Incubus to be not really anywhere near alternative the way they were. They're a lot
Right.
heavier. They were more of a, obviously more of a rock for that era, more of the almost on the fringes of the new metal to me. They weren't quite as heavy as Korn or anything, but some of their songs could get pretty heavy. And then they
Yeah.
kind of mellowed as time went on. And to me, it was more of like the, I don't know, late 90s, early 2000s alternative ish, which instead of that mid 90s alternative, which there was a difference there, it was weird. That
Yeah.
mid 90s alternative took some elements to me from maybe a little bit of the new wave. It was a little poppier. You know, that to me anyway, it was still had maybe a hint of grunge. Like it was a little different. But I liked early Incubus, and then I kind of got away from them outside of a few songs. And then as time went on, I just really got into just listening to pretty much everything. And I don't know, again, I don't know if it came with age or whatever. It just wasn't a band that, like, again, I like the band. I listened to their early stuff, you know, way back when, and then I kind of gave up on them. I didn't really, anything that was put out beyond really 2000, 2001. I just kind of was like, whatever. And I went and revisited it and was like, you know what, this is really good. I don't know if it was like something I was like, I was like, maybe I shut this part off back then, and I was like, oh, I have all this new content to meet. Then I can go back and I can find all this new music now that maybe I've listened to once or twice. I heard a song on the radio or a song came through on a movie or something, but I have all this other stuff now, and I know it's not, not really what you're similar to what you're talking about, but I think sometimes it happens with bands in general. It's like maybe you fell in love with a band, you listen to the first like album or two, and then you just kind of fell away from them. And I think that was kind of how this one was for me.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I feel like as our musical taste, because think about when we were, and we've talked about this before, when we were younger and we were in high school and stuff, we were slaves to the genre. And it was, if it's not punk, I'm not listening to it. If it's not metal, I'm not listening to it. Like if it's, oh, Backstreet Boys, fuck them. They're fucking poppy sellouts,
Right, right.
that kind of shit. And oh, what do you get when you mix country and rap? Crap, because that's what they are. Like as we've gotten older, and again, we've discussed this. As we've gotten older, our musical horizons, we've kind of had the blinders kind of taken off so that we can observe the spectrum of what music is and we can appreciate what came before, what's now, and what came after, so we can see, like, all right, well, you know, this band might have been shitty because they weren't the genre I listened to, but now that I listen back, no, man, they're actually really good. Like some of their music is catchy. I would never have fucking listened to, like, you couldn't catch me dead listening to a fucking Backstreet Boys song or an NSYNC song. But you know what? I bought Justin Timberlake's album when it came out because it
Right,
was
right.
catchy as fuck. And
Yeah.
then you start listening to that and you're like, you know what? All right, I guess I'll give this shit a chance. And you listen to some shit that NSYNC did, and the shit's catchy. Michael Bublé, you know, who the fuck? I I would never listen to Michael Bublé. No, no, younger me would never listen to Michael Bublé. Michael Bublé just came up on stage with the fucking Foo Fighters at their concert in San Francisco.
And that's really cool.
Yeah,
And I think that's another thing too. You find out, and again, I remember this with Metallica and the whole S&M stuff. And then, because I mean, talk about how awesome that was,
yeah, that was
with,
that was fantastic.
doing the symphony behind it and all that. And then you have other bands that have done it over time with maybe they include bits of an orchestra, or, they have some, crazy singer, or they, whatever they do, they do something different. And it kind of pulls, because again, like you said, you were kind of tied to a genre. And when you start including elements like that, where you combined genres, if you will, you start getting interested in other types of music. So no, that's really cool. I didn't know about that with Buble. That's cool.
Yeah, they I saw a video of it on YouTube. They started playing I Just Haven't Met You Yet. Like they were
Hmm.
just doing the instrumental part, and then they show out in the crowd somebody holding up a I Heart Buble sign, and it was actually him.
Oh, that's cool.
And then he comes up on the stage, like, does anybody know how to sing this fucking song? And then how about the guy with the I Heart Buble sign? And they bring him up, and it's him. Like, they're playing it off like they don't know, but you know,
Yeah, of
and then
course. Yeah, it's a show. Yeah.
yeah. So that was cool. But to that point too, if you start like, if we look back at the 90s, and I can tell you where some of my musical tastes started to kind of diverge and kind of started to take in other genres that I wouldn't listen to normally. S&M is a great, that was what, 2000, 99, 2000.
Let's hit the Google up here and see. I knew it was in the late '90s.
Yeah, because I remember.
90, yeah, 99. Yep.
Okay, yeah, it came out Christmas time in '99 because I remember going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Sam Goody at the Hamilton Mall and buying it. Um, but all right, so there was that was in '99, and that kind of opens up a little bit into into the orchestral stuff and the symphonic stuff. But when obviously when ska hit, I was a big fan of ska. Um, when now from ska sprang the summer of swing. And do you remember when swing music
Oh
was
yeah.
all the
Oh
rage?
yeah.
Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, Cherry Poppin' Daddies, Brian Setzer Orchestra, all these bands coming out and playing swing music, which is
Was
essentially an offshoot. I mean, at the time, it was viewed as an offshoot of the ska movement,
when it really was
which
just a.
obviously swing music came out years and years and years before,
Oh yeah. Yep. Yep.
like decades before. But it started picking up steam. So then you start listening to swing music. And then that's when I started to be like, all right, well, swing music's cool. What other bands played around that time? Squirrel Nut Zippers.
Yep.
That's another one.
Yep.
I'd be remiss if I
I was
didn't
thinking of
mention
them
that.
too. I was just waiting for you to say
Since I
it.
didn't, since pretty much when I do karaoke, Hell is one of my staples. Um, but there was that was around the time when I started being like, all right, well, maybe like Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack, those guys, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. I was like, maybe some of their music's kind of cool too. And then a couple years, and when I go to college, and I've got access to internet and Napster, and I'm downloading shit tons of Frank Sinatra and Rat Pack music and swing music and everything else to go
Hmm.
along with the ska, the punk, the metal, the alternative, and that's the time. I think that's around the time period where I started thinking, okay, well, maybe there's some cool country songs too. And I started getting a little bit of country, and my musical horizon started to broaden a little bit, you know, and and then it incorporated some rap. I heard "Fuck Dying" by Ice Cube with Corn, because Corn crossed over with Ice Cube
Right.
doing the whole Family Values tour thing, right? So I start getting crossover there. And then Eminem comes into the picture. And then every fucking white person on the face of the earth is into rap.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that just kind of blew the doors open. You were saying something that was really interesting about how, going back to real quick to your Frank Sinatra statement, because right around that time, and maybe think of it too, the Beatles One album was released, I believe, in '99 or
Yes.
2000, and the Elvis 30 number one hits was released in the same time frame, like 2001, 2002. So you had two obviously iconic, artists in the Beatles and Elvis that were essentially, that was the whole goal, was to try to basically expose them to a whole new generation. Not that not that obviously we weren't familiar with them, but because of an inclusion of a certain variant of a song in a movie or whatever. Like I think of that with Elvis and Suspicious Minds,
Yes.
or I know you had some stuff going on with the Beatles and mashup stuff, even
Yeah.
with Come Together, that one comes to mind. But you just have some really, really cool things that were basically, like I said, kind of exposing new people, new audiences, to stuff that had been out for obviously decades at that point. So yeah, no, go ahead. I just you're
Yeah, no,
not your comment. I had to kind of had to chime in on that one.
but speaking to that point, then you have the advent of satellite radio, which we were in on fairly early.
Hmm.
Um, I know, listening to Sirius XM or I don't remember. I think it was XM is the
It
one
was
that I
just,
had.
yeah, I got on a straight XM. I want to say it was
Yeah.
probably 2004 or 5, whenever close to launch.
Right. And so um, they had an Elvis channel and they had a Beatles channel. And I can remember just looking for new music and just being like, all right, well, let's venture out from the normal stuff because I've got so many presets. Let's venture out and throw in the Elvis channel on, or throw in the Beatles on, or the Bruce Springsteen channel. You know, like these bands, like obviously Bruce Springsteen, growing up where we grew up, he was everywhere.
Oh yeah.
But Um, but Elvis, you know, I remember listening at my grandmother's house, my grandparents' house every Christmas. She would put on the Elvis Christmas album. So I had already had the seeds planted. It was just a matter of finding my entryway. What was my gateway to it? Beyond that, I had, you know, Elvis was present in my mind, and it was like, all right, well, let's see, what's a song? And Suspicious Minds is exactly the song. That was the song that hit, and I was like, man, this is such a good song. Like, I really enjoy this. Let's see what other Elvis music I enjoy. And
Right.
that led me to listening to that channel. And then the Beatles, you know, I can't remember what the first Beatles song that I heard was, probably Let It Be, but like getting into that and finding the gateway into that. And then seeing the movie, oh, what the fuck was the movie? Across the Universe. Have you ever seen that?
Uh, I don't think I have.
Dude, I highly recommend it. Do you like the Beatles at all?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. My first concert I went to was Paul McCartney.
That's right, my bad. So I highly recommend it. The story is the story of the Beatles, but told through their music.
Oh, okay. You know, yeah, yeah. I've okay. I've not seen it. I am familiar with it, but this title skipped my. Of course, here we are talking about them, and you would think that that would ring a bell, but my brain's all fried right now. So,
It's all right. But
no, yeah,
movie.
cool. Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that from a couple people. So, yeah,
The only downside to it is Bono's in it,
eh.
but you know,
Um, but it's funny you said movie, and we're talking about Elvis, Beatles, whatever. Again, 2002, you had the American 4 release, Johnny Cash,
yes,
Hurt, and talk about exposing a whole new audience and generation to. Now, I was obviously pretty familiar with it, with the hit with him, but that just was like a whole nother level. So
right.
that kind of catapulted me into doing the same thing. It's like, what else like can I find? And then you start like really digging in. It's like, my goodness, it's
Well,
just
and that's the thing, man. So Hurt coming out, and then you start looking, all right, well, what else is Johnny Cash? You know, obviously you've heard different songs by Johnny Cash growing up. Even me, like my family's not really country. You know, my dad eventually did get into country, but I wasn't growing up listening to Johnny Cash.
right.
But hearing Hurt, and then like, all right, well, what else? And going through those American recordings that he did, where he covered Rusty Cage by Soundgarden,
Oh, I know. I love that one.
dude. And then just going back through there, and then he finding like songs he did, like "It Ain't Me," that he did the duet with June Carter Cash, Man in Black, just everything. Like you go back, and then his catalog is just so fucking good.
Yeah. Yep.
It's so good.
Yeah. No, that whole era though was really weird though. So you had, I don't know, it's weird because it's kind of transitory. You did have obviously new music being made. That new music is always being made, but you had the kind of I can't say the alternative punk ska scene was obviously that was kind of on waning, if you
Yeah,
will. So it's like, what's the next step? And that's kind of what I fell back into, and it kind of got me into looking at older music. However, in that same time though, I started to also kind of stick and go back and say, okay, what happened to some of these sky acts that I really liked? What have they done in the mid 2000s? And so that's how I started really digging in and finding like Catch 22 and Streetlight Manifesto and all these other, acts that turned into other bands basically,
right.
based off of, people moved on and they graduated college and whatever they did. It's not like the genre died necessarily.
No,
It just evolved into something else. They're still making the music,
Right.
just not nearly as popular, and it certainly wasn't getting any airtime. You still had your core, I guess, fan base there. Obviously, just not as expansive as it once was.
Right.
So I started really digging into finding stuff that was really like, I say off the wall. Not these, not certainly not everyday names of bands. And yeah, no, and then I kind of just stayed that way for a long time. But always had like the same stuff obviously that we grew up with, or I'd always go back to, I mean, there's certain things that are always going to be in your binder, if you will, but yeah, I stayed that way for a long time. But me, I've always been that way too. I try to find these oddball things just because it's like, well, no one else is listening to that. I want to know why. Is it really that bad?
Right. No, dude, and at the time, and this is where my musical taste got weird. Well, I won't say weird, but this is where they kind of started. I would go down one path, and then I would end up going down a rabbit hole of that kind of music. So right around the Johnny Cash time, like when I was really getting into Johnny Cash, um, I was really into the Ramones at the time. So like going to older bands, but then I found the Postal Service.
Mm.
And the Postal Service only released one album. One out, that's
Oh,
it.
that's right. Yeah.
And so then I started finding bands where like they only released one album. So I've got, that's when I find them. That's when I find Gratitude, who I don't know if you've heard of them. They
No,
released
I'm not familiar
one
with them.
album
No.
and that was it. It was almost like a pop punk supergroup. Um, and you find these little niche bands that released 1, 2 albums and then broke up. And then I started finding stuff like I bought AFI's new album because I was buying shit that was on the Madden soundtrack.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation too.
Right. And then because the Madden soundtracks I used to really like, now it's mostly rap and it's newer rap and I'm not really into it. But um
And he won't let you import your own music anymore.
yeah, no, and that
Mm.
pisses me off. But so I go to Sam Goody, which was my first mistake, but I go to Sam Goody in the Deffert Mall, and I'm like, "Yo, I got this AFI album, and I really like it. Like, who else would be good? Like, who else is like that?" And the dude gave me the format, and the format, if you don't know, is the band where the lead singer left them and became Fun.
Oh, okay.
Not like AFI in the least fucking bit, but still a good album. It was a good album.
Right.
I'm not gonna shit on it. But I was like, I got it and I listened to it and I kept waiting for songs to get heavier and darker and shit. I'm like, the fuck? Why the fuck? This is not like I'm glad it was good because I'd have been pissed if it wasn't. But it was you just accidentally find shit.
Yeah, no, and you said to hit on a key point there. That's another way you kind of discuss, especially then. I think that was a key time for it. Listening to a movie, watching a show, and particularly playing a video game. There would be like a song that hits. I did that quite a bit with the show. I still have songs from like that were in MLB The Show like maybe 10, 12 years ago or so that'll still pop up in my playlist.
I've got a couple songs from MVP Baseball.
Yeah, see, it's weird, right? I mean, and it's and especially then, it's likely that that song was kind of popular elsewhere,
Yeah.
maybe. But
Dude,
sometimes those games picked up on rights of songs that were maybe like what would be considered the B side.
right.
So like the band would be popular enough to have a radio play song, but they would pick off the B side, and that's what would be thrown on the soundtrack.
Well, and that's something that we should, we give EA a lot of shit, a lot of shit, and it's all deserved. Like not one bit of it is not deserved. But they did their soundtracks to games were outstanding in the 2000s. Like Fallout Boy, before Fallout Boy was huge,
Hmm.
Blink 182, the game the fuck Burnout 3 and Burnout 4, the
Oh, dude,
soundtracks for them.
those are amazing.
Yellow Card. I'm trying to think. Like I can picture a few here and there. AFI was in there. Like there was a ton of just great music on the Madden soundtracks and on the Burnout soundtracks and on the MVP baseball soundtracks. And I don't remember during that time I wasn't playing NHL. I was playing MVP or not MVP, ESPN.
Hmm.
Or I was playing NHL Hits. So an NHL Hits had Bombshell by fucking Power
Power
Man
Man
5000.
5000. Yeah.
So, you know, but
Yeah, no, you're right though. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, and here's the thing too, and I think that's what is a all-encompassing thing with something like that. And I want to stick to music here, but I do have to say this is that to me that makes the gameplay experience that much better when you have a
oh yeah,
good song. It's like watching a show or a movie that has a good background theme. It just kind of makes it that much better. Hell, I love whenever a video game has a good menu theme.
yeah.
I mean, to me, it just makes it makes it better.
Well, think about it. How inextricably linked are video games and music at this point? What's a tune that you will just randomly find yourself humming at any given time?
The NBA Jam Team Select.
Yeah, dude,
I'm
Super,
serious because it's stuck
Super
in my
Mario,
head.
Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
overworld theme. I'll be sitting at work and I'll just be like, dun, 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 dun.
Right, right.
Just random, like
Or
for
the
no
or like
fucking reason.
the Final Fantasy fanfare.
Yeah,
Like that stuff is constant. Like those little sound bites and songs. Like some of that stuff is just stuck.
right.
It's just what it is. But no, I mean, and that's the cool thing. So going back to like that time frame in the 2000s, you're talking at this point we're in that 15 to 20 years ago range. That was it. Like and the cool thing was, and I mentioned it, like you could have these games and you'd upload your own music to it, which was awesome.
Yeah,
That was really cool with wrestling games, but that didn't last too long.
man.
Um, but no, that's the thing. Like you got these games that kind of were hitting on these good bands, and big bands. They were. It's not like you mentioned it, Blink-182. It's not like that was a small act.
No,
So
and
yeah,
it was constant. Like I don't remember at what point it changed, but there was a point where games kind of stopped using it, you know. And I don't, because I wasn't a fan of the Madden games. I couldn't tell you when Madden transitioned completely away from rock. I can tell you that NHL 13 had an awesome soundtrack, and that's the last video game soundtrack. Well, maybe 14 had a good one too. 13 had probably my favorite hockey soundtrack of all time. Um, and then 14 had the Dropkick Murphys on it, so it automatically gets points.
yeah. I would say 10 years ago was probably your cutoff.
Yeah,
Really, read about that. Because I could think of some MLB The Show stuff that's with. I mean, there's a couple songs I think within the last. I think. Oh gosh, what's the name of that one song? "Gold on the Ceiling" uh,
yeah.
by the
Yeah, I
Black
threw that
Keys.
in there. Popular
But
music.
then I just looked up the year. That's 2011.
Yeah,
I act like that's yesterday. A Good Song Never Dies. That's another by Saint Motel, although that's newer. That's I think 3 years ago, 2 years ago. But again, I'm only looking at like one or two that I
right.
really like. There's it sucks because it's few and far between. And again, it's not because of I'm saying the music's necessarily bad, but a lot of the stuff that they put in those games, I have not played a Madden game in a long time, so I can't speak to that. But even MLB The Show, whether that's got heavy hip hop or rap influence, and I love that genre, just as much as I love every other genre. But I've not kept up with it, and I don't like a lot of the newer stuff.
Right.
So just not for me. I'm not saying it's bad.
Right.
Just not me.
Right. And that's the thing. Like with Madden, I've literally turned off all of the music except for like the generic music because I'm just not into. I went through and I listened to every song. Like I gave it a shot. But I also got to the point where it was like one song that I liked, and it was just repeating that one song over and over. So I'm like,
Right.
"No, fuck that. I'm just turning it generic," and that it is what it is at that point.
Yeah. And it's, whatever. I mean, maybe that's a sign of age. That's
Yeah,
how we still say.
and that's all I take it as. And that's the thing. Again, not saying that the music's bad because you know that's my opinion is that I don't like it, but at the same time, like there were songs that were on there that I would say I can quantify them as good songs, but I just wasn't into them.
Right. Um, so we kind of broke into the like Sirius XM radio stuff. I kept it for a long time. I finally gave up on it due to cost. I just thought it got a little outlandish.
Yeah,
But it was cool. I mean, you got exposed to new stuff. You got exposed to old stuff, or I always like to say new to me.
right,
Um, hey, I discovered this song. It's awesome. Oh well, it's 20 years old. Well, I don't care.
right.
It's new to me.
Yeah,
Um, so that was a cool way to do it. Um, to me, obviously, kind of price itself out. It's whatever. But I joined, Google Play Music when it first launched, and strictly only for the fact of being able to upload and back up all of my MP3s. So it was like, yeah, I keep them on, at the time, I had it backed up on my computer, and then I had a attachable storage, so it was backed up on that. And so I had a couple different things, I'd have them on, external hard drives, whatever. And then it's like, getting to the point where I stopped downloading music as much as I was. I'd gotten to that, oh yeah, I've got, 80 or 100 gigs worth. That's enough. I just got to a point where it's like, how much do I really need every single song from one band that I like maybe two songs from?
yeah,
It got a little ridiculous. But the cool thing I liked about that was I could upload my entire catalog to Google Play Music, and then they started offering the service. And obviously, that's now rebranded to YouTube Music. But the neat thing is that my catalog is still there, so it's still part of something that I'd started. Gosh, I don't remember that. It's got to have been a decade ago or better now. And I can still like reference like something I, have in my library that might not be available on streaming. But that's a whole other thing, though. Like the streaming to me is very similar to the XM and Sirius XM. Is like they have like these like discover stations, and it's exactly what it is. It helps you discover new music.
right.
So like I don't know how. I know you said you're consuming now with at least with you're going, or at least going back with CDs right now for the time being. But how are you otherwise? Like, are you doing streaming service at all, or looking at
No, I don't do any streaming services.
straight through iTunes or?
Straight through iTunes. Like I buy everything through iTunes.
Gotcha.
Um, or if I see a CD like super duper cheap, on clearance or whatever, I'll grab the CD and rip it and throw it on, you know, throw it in my music folder. But everything I have is stuff that I've actually, well, all right. Besides the stuff that's been in my collection forever, everything I
Right.
bought or everything I have from a certain point on is all purchased either by me on physical media or through iTunes.
Have you, out of curiosity, have you toyed around with any of the streaming stuff? Even like,
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, obviously we all did with Pandora. I
yeah,
mean,
no, no, no.
that was everyone's gateway, but
I don't even use Pandora.
really,
No, when I say I don't use any streaming service for music, I did at work when I was at work and I was able to listen to music at work, but I wasn't supposed to have my phone with me. I would
hmm
log into Pandora at work, and that's how I would do it through there. But the only thing I did was I signed up for Apple Music so that it would replace shitty versions of songs that I had on
right,
my
right, right.
phone with the good versions from iTunes.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I was hoping that it would like better organize my music, better curate it. It didn't. It just pissed me off because then what would happen is I would go to play a song and instead of it being on my phone, it would be like I'd be on an airplane, I'd go to play a song, and it wouldn't play because it wasn't downloaded.
Oh, gotcha.
So
Yeah, that kind of drives me nuts. Like I'll have songs that will auto download after listening to them, a couple times. Of course, got to be careful because then you're running into maybe a storage issue dependent upon your size of your phone storage. But no, I've only ever had Google Play into YouTube Music. I've never owned any other service. I played with Pandora quite a bit early on, just because I thought it was fascinating when it launched. I was just like, oh, I can plug in a song and it's going to find other songs that are like this. It was, to me, well ahead of its time for what it did.
yeah,
Particularly now, because it's like, it's really cool because like I'll throw a song on, start radio on YouTube Music, and boom, it's got like 50 songs in front of it that are exactly what I want to listen to. And that's really, I just love that. But the one thing I do like about it, though, it does have the Discover feature, which worked really, really well, and then it was broken, and now it's working well again. It stopped working for a time because it kept suggesting stuff that it was like suggesting stuff that like I owned. So it's like, I don't have to discover it. Like, well, I get this one. Like, I know Sabotage. Like, you don't have to.
right.
You don't have to recommend that one to me. But it's cool because it's like it'll pick up on like what you're listening to typically by maybe genre. If you're listening to something heavier or more than you are something else, or stuff that you typically like, or it'll like kind of go through your library and kind of pick off like, oh well, you have a little bit of alternative, or you have a little bit of classic rock or whatever, and it'll go through and it'll find a song that might be from the same band or a similar band that just either sounds similar or has something to it, and it's like, oh, this is really cool, and again it starts that cycle again. It's like, oh, I like this one, so now I'm going to go find everything else by this band. And so that's kind of what I've been doing the last, I don't know, a couple of years now, is just kind of using that feature, and that's how I've been digging in lately.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's so good. Well, here's the funny thing. My dad does more with Pandora than I do.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, my dad uses streaming services all day long. You know, he uses, obviously, the only streaming that I really do is internet radio, like listening to stations from back home, like sports stations, or listening to, sometimes I'll just get the itch and I'm like, let me put on MMR.
Right.
Or let me put on, when, well, YSP hasn't been YSP in forever. It's WIP now. But 104.5 is an alternative station up there. I forget what the other one is. There's like one or two other ones. But when Mark was on the radio, I would listen to his station through different streaming services, iHeartRadio and stuff like that. But my dad does it more than I do. Uses Pandora, and he's like, "Hey, can you help me with Pandora?" I'm like, "Dad, you know more about Pandora than me."
Yeah, I haven't messed with it in a long time. I know it's just it's got a paid component to it. Actually, I think we're on Pandora, oddly enough. Yeah,
I use Pandora all the time. It's
yeah. No, it was funny. I'd gone. I was just thinking about that. I'd gone through and one night got the itch to like see if I could connect our pod feed to like everything under the sun. And I'm not gonna lie. Look, we're about finished up here, so I can speak to this part. Man, it is hard to get connected to certain services. Like they make you jump through hoops.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, but now like I actually figured it out to where it's like, yeah, if you connect it to a certain like service that's named, I'm going to be misspeaking here, but like Stitcher, that might connect it to something else like Pandora, because some of these companies own each other.
Right.
And they may not be listed. And so that's how that happens. It's the weirdest thing.
Stitcher.
In fact, yeah, go ahead.
Stitcher's good.
Yeah, and it's funny because with our website, noisebridadepod.com, some of those domains that we've registered over the last couple of years, get this, I've did that through the ones I've done through Google Domain. They sold that part of their company. Google sold part of their company, which is weird, to Squarespace. I got an email about that today. It was like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Like,
I had to let a couple of them go because they jacked up the prices.
yeah, I let a couple expire too.
I'm trying to think of which ones. I think
And we'll keep noisebrigadepod.com.
yeah, we'll keep that one.
I mean, that's a
But what was I think I had to let go of chupacabrafordicks.com and alwaysbechupacabra.com.
yeah. I forget which ones I let go. Can't remember. There were a couple of the odd ones.
BigBeefyShootyBoys.com.
Is that still there?
I don't know.
Big Beefy. I don't know. Yeah, still there.
All right, let's see.
Shooty spelled with an IE.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, all right, good. We still have doyoulikebears.com.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
I wonder if anybody accidentally goes to that, like just looking for other things.
Yeah, well, hey, we can pull back the curtain a little bit. So I do have the analytics feed.
Oh yeah.
That you can see like where the traffic comes from. But guess what? I don't check it.
What'd you say?
I don't check it.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. I need
because you can check like, so let's say someone typed in Google search the words Noise Brigade, and they were able to find our website through that search. I'm not saying obviously it's not the first thing that comes up,
no.
but within like the first 10 pages, it's probably somewhere on there. So if someone finds our site through clicking or typing those words in, I can see that. I just don't check it.
Let's see. So Bandcamp, Instagram. Oh, there's a band. There's a band called Noise Brigade.
Yeah, and if you type in like, yeah, just the word Noise Brigade, or the obviously it brings up the Boss Tone song, which I mean, come on, we've talked about that many a times. It's the whole reason why our cover looks the way, or the cover looked the way it did for the longest time. It was based off of the Boss Tones. But no, yeah, but if you type in the word podcast with it, we come up first.
Yes. And so let's see. All right, so we show up as Spotify, I think it's like 10 to 15 down.
That's not terrible.
Yeah, I mean, so Noise Brigade opens Spotify.com artist because of the band, and Noise Brigade on Apple Music because of the band. And then you scroll down and we are under, let's see, The Life and Death of the Infernal Noise Brigade, which I guess is a band.
We're going to find out that we're like the 14th most popular podcast named Noise Brigade, aren't we?
No, there's no other. There doesn't look like there's any other podcasts. It looks like there's just bands.
Yeah. But that's the funny thing though, is playing around with these services and stuff. Though it's really funny getting this stuff linked over. It's interesting, and one of these days we'll dive into that side of it. I kind of feel like we have to have Rich on that one though.
Yeah, I feel like we do too.
More.
I need to get the whatchamacallit from you, the login information, because I've been wondering about that, and I just can't remember. I can't remember how to log in at all.
Yeah, we'll get to it. We won't share that password here.
I mean, do you think anybody's going to get it?
That password is
Jesus Christ, Richard!